Hello. In this video, I would like to talk to you about the guide or finding the guide along the way. So when you practice the way or when you practice any serious form of spiritual development, or if you're serious about your religion and so on, you sort of, you could say, you need a guide. You find this in the old religions, say in the East. In the Eastern religions, you have the guru, very important part of them, the Hindu and the Buddhist tradition and so on. But you find it really everywhere, you know. In Catholicism, for instance, you have the priest, your confessor, or your spiritual, if you're taking your religion really seriously, you'll have your spiritual counselor or advisor and so on. So it's kind of a natural part of the way, as it were, to find, if you like, somebody higher, somebody who knows more than yourself, yeah? There's a kind of a modesty involved in this, of course, and that's important. But I think nowadays the role of the guru or the priest or the shaman or whatever name you want to give the, as it were, the higher person, I think that role of that person has changed a lot in our modern time. And if you look for where precisely in recent history this sort of change occurred, you can go to, say, the Renaissance period in Western culture. A big change occurred there in the development, shall we say, of the mind, but especially the soul of human beings. And this is the point I'm making here, is that the soul goes through a development as well as the physical body. I mean, no scientist denies that our physical bodies were different, say, 10,000 years ago or whatever, than they are now. But you cannot really separate the soul. If you understand the soul in a holistic sense, you cannot totally separate it from the body. The soul goes through a development as well. This is the point I'm trying to make here. And this is the point you really need to understand if you want to really understand the soul, the development of the soul, or how your soul is now in relation to, say, go back to ancient India, for instance, thousands of years ago. The soul was obviously different then than it was, say, in the ancient Egyptian period, or look at how the soul developed through the Judaic period, for instance. You can trace this through the Bible, through the Old Testament. So the point is that the soul goes through a development, and we're living in a time now of the soul which really began in the, as I say, in the Renaissance period, sort of 15th century approximately. And you might then ask, what is the distinguishing characteristic of the soul nowadays from an earlier period? And one of the main things is that we now have a very strong sense of our ego, of ourself, if you like, which wasn't there in an earlier time. Earlier people got a very strong, real sense of their identity, of their self, from the group or the family or the tribe. Nowadays, we have to find this, we do need really to find this identity within ourselves. We have become very, I don't know precisely how to phrase it, ego conscious, put it that way. soul now is very conscious. We are very conscious in our soul of ourself or of our ego. Another word I like is scientistic. We've become very scientistic. We think far more than, I suppose, we think far more for ourselves than people did in an earlier epoch. The sort of the priests and the gurus and so on did the thinking for the ordinary person. But now we're all now sort of in a big barrel. We're in one big boat. We're all in the same boat, as they say, and we the leaders and the priests and so on, they're not as looked up to, shall we say, as much as they used to be. So we have, and because of the reason for that is that the nature of the soul has become very self-orientated, shall we say. Now, the problem, therefore, with this sort of scientific nature of our modern soul, this sort of thinking part, that we think an awful lot more than we used. The problem is nowadays we think too much. I just always remember my mother, who was a very wise Sophia type of a woman. She used to always say to us as children, thinking is bad wit, she used to say. We never understood what she meant, of course. But it gradually dawned on me over the decades, what she really meant is that, too much thinking is not good for you, not good for your soul. You can get bogged down in all kinds of nuances and whatever, theological, philosophical, or technological, or whatever you want. Thinking too much is not a good thing. It has its sort of limits, as it were. And so therefore, in relation to how to find the guide along the way, you have to meditate. I stress this point everywhere in my blogs and my videos and so on, that if you want to really follow the way in the sense in which I am trying to promote it here in my videos and so on, you really have to meditate, as distinct from prayer. If you're a good Catholic or whatever, a good Protestant or a good in any religion, you will pray. Meditation is different. Meditation, and I've gone into this in other parts of my work here. So I'll just say briefly, you need to meditate, and when you meditate, what actually happens when you are a serious meditator and you really practice it very, very seriously, you are really trying to transcend this thinking part of your being. This not so much the thinking, but this kind of chattering, this inner chattering that goes on all the time, really, especially if you're an intellectual type of person. And meditation helps you very much. In fact, that's one of its main benefits. It gets you over this thinking threshold, shall we say, and you then arrive at a point where you sort of are empty. Yeah, you become a kind of an empty vessel. When you meditate, you take a verse or whatever, you have a sign or a symbol or something. You're always meditating on something. But when you really do develop it, you sort of get beyond the actual word or the mantra or whatever, and you reach a kind of an emptiness. This to me really is the goal of meditation, to get to this empty stage. And then you can see what happens then, you reach what I call, and it is known as this in general literature as well, as the still point. You reach kind of a stillness. It's a beautiful feeling of peace and quiet. It's very hard to describe, to define it, because each person has this experience in a very personal way. But this stillness is a very, very, very important part of it. And like I am now, I've reached a point where I can't sort of go much further. You will know this point that you reach in your meditation only when you reach it. You'll get priests and gurus and all kinds of people who try to describe it. St. Paul sort of described it in one of his letters as I can't remember exactly the phrase he used, but a peace beyond all knowing, or something like that, he said. And when you think of the parting gift of Christ, when he was leaving his disciples before he ascended, he gave his peace to them as his parting gift. This is in John's Gospel, I think. So it's very hard to describe what this is, but it is. You are approaching the guide. This is the point I'm making here. This stillness, which is also can be described as a light. Yeah, this light is the light of your guide beginning to awaken in you. And as I say, each person will experience the guide in their own way. But, if we are in a sense all in darkness, but we now, when we really practice our meditation and really be a diligent follower of the way, we come and we find eventually the light. And I can guarantee you that if you do it seriously, you will find the light. This light is the light of Sophia. In our book here, in our blogs and my blogs, this is the light of Sophia. If you have this experience, don't read too much into it. That's another thing. When you come out of your meditation, always sort of reflect on it carefully and don't rush into any kind of judgments. But one judgment you can make is that Sophia is entering your life. And Sophia, therefore, in that sense, is the guide along the way. Okay? So, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.